You're listening to The Mountain Spirit, a podcast of Christian Appalachian Project. I'm a firm believer that we're all connected by our shared humanity, and that finding that intersection sometimes just means having a conversation. Today we get to hear from Callie Northern. She's the Education Director at the Living Arts and Science Center, which is a local nonprofit in Lexington, Kentucky. Callie has deep roots in Appalachia. She grew up in the heart of Appalachia on a tobacco farm in Rockcastle County, Kentucky. She's been playing bluegrass and traditional music since she was 8 and continues to love a variety of music and shares it with her students. Hi, Callie. Welcome to the show.
Hello. Thank you for having me.
Well, we're very excited to hear more about your background and your students and the work that you do. So why don't we start out with the basics? Could you share with us how you were introduced to the fiddle? Where did that love come from for you? And how was it nurtured maybe by your family or your community throughout your childhood?
Yeah, so I actually did not grow up in a musical family. My dad played a little bit of guitar when he was a teenager, and I, from about the age of 6, had this little, back whenever we had VHSs, we had a documentary about Woody Guthrie and Leadbelly and their music. And so, didn't have a lot of VHS tapes growing up. So that was one of the options to choose from. So I just loved that documentary, which is really funny because, as a 6-year-old kid sitting down and watching a documentary of, various musicians playing, I loved it. And I always remember there was a female fiddle player. She was in John Mellencamp's band, and John Mellencamp always reminded me of my dad. And so, I kind of looked up to him a little bit. And then the fiddle player was sitting on the porch. She had holes in her jeans. She kind of, looked like had the same color hair as me. I'm like, maybe I'll look like her when I grow up. And I just thought she was so cool. And so ever since that point, I was like, Dad, I want to play the fiddle, and so I begged my parents to buy me a fiddle, and so he finally gave in. Him and my brother, we went to at Mount Vernon. There used to be a little music store. I have no idea what it was called. And they bought me a fiddle, and he said, okay, well, I'm going to buy you this, and you have to play it for a year. And if you play it for a year, then I'll get you fiddle lessons. And so I think I drove everybody nuts, because I had no training. And so after, about a year and a half, he said, okay. And so I started taking fiddle lessons. So that's kind of my introduction to music, which is kind of a funny story. And so my dad, played a little bit of guitar as a kid. I never really grew up when I was really young, seeing him play, but he started playing with me kind of as backup, which was really cool. So then we kind of created a musical family.
Oh, that's so sweet. So
yeah.
The reverse musical family from the child.
Exactly. Yeah.
So tell me, so you said you started playing at the age of 8, but you also said when we talked earlier, you started performing when you were 10. Do you remember some of those earlier performances, and what was that like for you as a child performing in front of other people, like outside of your family?
Yeah. So my first performance, what I would say, pay, some people will say, well, you're a professional musician if you get paid. So I don't think I was a professional at 10 years old, but, I was practicing, and one of my mom's really good friends owns a pottery shop. It's Tater Knob Pottery, Sarah Culbreth, who I've known my entire life. And so she was really sweet, and she heard me playing. I'm sure it was not great. And she said, I want you to come and play for they have a festival every year. I want you to come play for my spring festival. And I can't remember how much I got paid, but at like 10 years old, it was like $100 or something. And back then that was a lot of money. I was like, oh my God, I'm going to do this forever. I'm going to make $100. And I bought a digital camera, like a fancy Canon digital camera with my funds. So that was my introduction into, playing music for people. And of course, when you're a kid, everybody thinks you're cute, whether you're, really that good or not. So I find as I get older, people are not, I'm not as cute as I maybe once was.
But the music has gone up with.
Exactly. Hopefully that's improved, right?
And I'm hoping you're getting paid more than $100 now.
Right.
So is there a particular memory around a certain piece that you learned to play when you were young? And if so, why does that memory stick with you?
Yeah, I was always, as a kid, really terrified I was not afraid to perform the fiddle, but I was always really afraid to sing. Took me a really long time to get adjusted to singing. I always just wanted to play the fiddle, and my dad would always do most of the singing. So I would say that, my shtick, if you will, whenever I was young was always playing fiddle tunes, and then sometimes I would get asked to play for churches, and I would play a fiddle tune at the end, which was always kind of a fun little, wasn't necessarily a church song or a, religious song, but it would just be something fun to kind of end the day. So that was kind of always my shtick for a really long time, was the fiddle tune.
So tell me what it was like for you growing up on a tobacco farm, and how do you think that shaped the person that you are today?
Yeah, so I grew up on a tobacco farm. So I have two brothers and a sister, so pretty big family. And yeah, I think there's pictures of me, laying in the tobacco rows, just like as a baby on a little blanket, because that was back before we even had the setter, that was attached to the tractor. So they had to hand plant everything. So, I grew up, in the tobacco fields, literally. Before I was old enough to really help, I would either be sleeping, when I was a little baby, or I would take all of my cars and I would make roads and play in the dirt and that kind of thing. So I think that really, shaped me to be able to be, because I'm the youngest by 10 years. And so, all my siblings were old enough to help at that point. And so I was kind of always the baby and had to kind of entertain myself a little bit. So, I think that really shaped me to be creative and to kind of, whatever you have, that's what you got. And you kind of just work through that. So I think that's one thing. And it also taught me, to be a worker and to really, if it's something that you want, you have to get creative and you have to hustle and you have to do all of these things in order to get to where you want to be. I grew up as, you helped on the farm. That's what you did. And, so as if you were old enough, you were helping and, making it fun and making it, exciting. I always tried to, I loved it. I loved growing up on the tobacco farm.
Is the farm still in your family?
It sure is. Yes, we do not grow no more tobacco. Now we're more. My family's more cows and hay, and my brothers have a logging company, and so a lot of those things. Unfortunately, we had to let the tobacco go just because we were typically about a 10-acre, 10 acres of tobacco, and that. It's really tough these day and ages. It's more for some of those industrial farms that can grow a lot more. So, as I became older, there was less and less of, when I was young, tobacco was our main source of income for the year. And as I got older, it came less and less of that. And then for a couple years, we grew it honestly just for fun, just to let my nieces and nephews, my older siblings, kiddos, have that experience of how it works. And I think that's one of the main reasons that we continued to do it for so long. And then, just gradually kind of had to let that go.
Yeah, but I'm glad to hear that the farm is still in your family, and even though you all got a chance to transition to something. And I love the idea too of helping the nieces and nephews see like sort of a thing that was part of their family history and seeing the process of growing tobacco, and I'm sure drying it out and all the things. But that seems like a very cool thing to put in their sort of history of their family traditions as well. So tell me, we talked a little bit in the introduction about you blending traditional bluegrass and modern styles. So why is that the route you chose to express yourself, and what exactly does that mean?
It's a good question. Yeah, so, I grew up very much playing traditional fiddle. I never learned to read music. I do not know how to read music. I always joke because my oldest son is 12 and he's taking clarinet. He's in the band in his middle school, and he always jokes that he can read more music than I can, which is true. But, I never had an interest in the classical violin style of music. And I don't necessarily have a reason for that. It was just never interesting to me. I fell in love with that rough edge type of music, the like, it's not perfect kind of style, because I am probably, you've got perfectionist. I'm probably on the farthest other side of that scale that you can get. And so I think that, that worked for me well, to be able to have something that I didn't feel like every note had to be absolutely, absolutely perfect. But yeah, so I grew up playing very traditional music. And as I got older, I got to expand my horizons more and went to college and just ended up meeting a lot of different types of musicians that played different styles of music, things that I had not seen before. And so with my current band that I play with, we're called the Kentucky Bourbon Trailers. We've been together about 4 years now. Our big thing was we were playing at so many venues and places that wanted to hear certain songs, like Jolene. Like, that's just a popular song that people will shout out in the crowd, oh, play Jolene. And so for us to accommodate the audience, we wanted to be able to play some of those types of songs. And so we thought, okay, well, we can, we've got these traditional instruments, these bluegrass instruments. We're playing these songs that are not necessarily bluegrass or traditional music. And so taking that instrumentation and making it our own really made it and helped us to stick out. And so we took that and put that into writing our own music. So that really made us stick out, which was something that we really wanted to do. And I really love taking modern songs and turning them into fiddle tunes and those types of things. So I think that's where a lot of that came from. And that definitely came farther on in my music career. I was pretty straightforward on, traditional gospel for a long time. And so being able to expand was really fun.
Yeah, that sounds very cool. I love it. Where's a place that you've performed that will surprise people, and why?
Wow, we could go on for a while. Kind of our my joke I tell a lot of times when I'm talking about my band in the last 4 years. So we started our band in 2020, right in the middle of COVID. Uh-huh. And so we say that if we played everywhere from the churches to the bar stools to the funerals to everything kind of in between. So yeah. I would say one of my, I don't know if it would be my favorite, but a very big memory I had is we had our bass player his family has a large van that we would sometimes take on some of our trips because we needed a large spot. And so we would be practicing. He'd be driving, and the rest of the band's practicing in the back. So like driving down the road in the van playing music. We recorded a video in downtown Frankfurt outside of Goodwood Brewing. We recorded a song out of the back of our van. We have both the doors open and the cars are passing by. So same van.
That van's going to put a whole new spin on traveling band.
Right. So that's definitely an interesting place that we have played, and that's happened, a couple of times. So RV parks are always kind of a party. Those are really fun to play at. So.
And what was the name of that song that you all did the video for?
It was actually My Old Kentucky Home. So we do a little bit of a different rendition of My Old Kentucky Home, as we do with pretty much every song. And we have a harmony, a four-part harmony part that we, did as the cars are passing by. And it's great. I think it's on Facebook. We're also all wearing matching. I think it was really close to 4th of July, and we're all like wearing these matching shirts with eagles on them. And like,
all right, we got to most definitely run out and find it. So what led you to want to embrace the education side of music in addition to the performing side?
Yeah. So I went to art school, and when I was in art school, I got a job at a daycare. And the reason that I got a job at a daycare is because daycares are not open on the weekends. And so I wanted, my entire life, I have always chosen a, job or career that has allowed me to have flexibility, specifically evenings and weekends because of music, because I've always performed music, and that's was always really important to me. And so making sure that I had a job that wasn't going to overlap with that too much. I got a job at this daycare and I just loved it. I loved teaching. I fell in love with teaching. I never thought I wanted to be a teacher. And so after I graduated, I said, I think I'm going to go this route. So I ended up going into preschool teaching. I taught preschool for 5 years, loved it. It was a hard decision to leave that, but I just needed to do something a little bit different. And I had been a contracted teacher at the Living Arts and Science Center for several years in the summer, teaching art, which is what my degree is in. And I taught music classes there as well. I would teach the kids how to make cantars and bring the fiddle and play and all of that kind of stuff. So when I took this position full time at the Living Arts and Science Center, it allowed me to still do education, but also not always be in the classroom, which was really nice. I fell in love with that education from starting in daycare, honestly. And I always incorporated music into my preschool rooms. I would bring my fiddle. And, I think I think music is a really, really important way to show, there's ways to show education through music. Everything can be a song. You can memorize something so much easier if it's in song form. And so those students that, would have a hard time maybe memorizing something, we could put it in song form and that would work for them. It doesn't work for everybody, but, it was always really important for me to show people and, educate on Appalachian music and Appalachian instruments, because it's not something that is extremely common. So it's really, really nice to show people, that side of music.
Yeah, I love it. What have you learned from your students over the years? So whether it's preschool or the students that you have to the Living Arts and Science Center.
Yeah. Well, my preschool students taught me, a lot. Like, I do not know my dinosaurs very well, and I have been schooled multiple times. So I always dreaded dinosaur week because that one was hard for me.
That's when the students know more than the teacher.
Exactly. And, I love it. I think that, you're never too old to learn something new. Nobody ever knows any of it. And so for me, I always try to be really positive and excited when I learn something new from a kid, especially if it's somebody little. I'm like, yeah, you know way more about dinosaurs than I do. Kids pick up things extremely quickly if they are interested. I have given fiddle lessons for a long time. I've never given a lot of lessons because I just haven't had time. Kids pick up music so quickly if they're interested in it and they want to be there. So I think it is always just so exciting to see a student grow and be, excited and interested in music, whether, whatever kind it is. I think that, I'm the type of, I have 2 kids and, my youngest is not even 2 yet, but my older one, always said, no matter what, whatever you want to do, that's fine. I'll support you in whatever you want to do. But I really want you to try music along with if you're going to play a sport or if you're going to, be a Boy Scouts or whatever that is. I want you to also try to play music as well. And it's not for everybody, but I do think that music is such an important thing. I think everybody should at least try it. If it's not your thing, that's okay. And so we'll see if he sticks with the clarinet long term, who knows? But I have told my little one is 2 and she has to play the banjo. Like there's just not really a choice.
So the last one is like, here we go. We're going to just go ahead and get the selection process out of the way.
Exactly. No choice. We need a banjo player in the band. So,
so what is the most inspiring thing about the work that you do now?
So I love, kind of going back to, I love being able to hopefully spread a little bit of education about Appalachian music and traditional music. With CAP, so we participate in Youth Fest and Work Fest every year. We've been really fortunate to be involved in that program and asked back every year. They haven't kicked us out yet, so we're hoping to keep that up. But we go to camp. We started going to Martin, Kentucky, which is a long drive from where I live, so that was fun. And then the last couple of years, we've been at Camp AJ in Jackson County, so a little bit closer. But it is always so amazing and fun to just play this music to a lot of kids and, college age kids, high school kids, and they've never heard this type of music. Because to me, I grew up with it. It's all I've ever known. And so, it does it's not hard for me to fathom, but it's also like, oh my goodness, they've never heard this music that I've played my entire life. And so that first initial awe moment, because we always start with a fiddle tune of like, oh wow, this is like, some are like, this is weird, or, not really even sure what to think about it. But that instrumentation of that traditional bluegrass blend together, and then those kids hearing it for the first time is always so cool. Really being able to hopefully, have them take a little piece of information home, with that style is really cool.
Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
3,204,335 people in Kentucky live in a community that does not have enough mental health professionals. Counselors from CAP's Family Life Counseling Services are here to stand in these gaps for Appalachian communities. You are not alone, and help is available. To learn more about CAP's Family Life Counseling Services, visit our website at christianapp.org/mental health. That's christianapp.org/mental health. If you or someone you love needs immediate help, please dial 988.
Lots of people have never visited Eastern Kentucky. So you talked about some of the kids that come in for Work Fest or Youth Fest, and they haven't heard this type of music. But there are lots of other people, whether they're just folks who may have seen something about Appalachia in a movie or something, but they've never actually been here themselves. What makes you proud to be Appalachian?
Well, I could go on all day. I think about how highly proud I am to be from Appalachia. There's just something about Appalachia gets a bad rap a lot of times for various reasons. And I always encourage people, you need to go and visit. You can't judge a book by its cover. Getting to know people in Appalachia is an amazing thing. I mean, they are the kindest people in the world, will do absolutely anything for you. Of course, not everybody, but I grew up my family is so close and so tight. One thing that I've always been really passionate about, especially I've learned more and more of this as, being in the work field of, it's not always about what degree you have, or, it's about, you have to have street smarts. You have to be quick on your feet. Just because somebody doesn't have a master's degree or, no degree at all, but they are just intelligent in a different way.
Yeah.
And it's not always about how much money you make. Having good work ethic is so important. Having those smarts and that, sometimes common sense and, and then, if you're able to get an education, that's amazing. But I think a lot of times from my experience of having that education and the background, it really just makes a great blend for your work life and your professional life, and not even that, but anything, honestly. And so I think that for me is something that's really important that I've learned, is that it's not about the degree all of the time.
Yeah. I love it. I love to hear folks in the region talk about the things that makes them proud and what they connect to and take out into the world as well. So what would you say to a kid who is interested in fiddling, but they got teased or something, or maybe they're not sure? How would you encourage them?
Oh, yeah. I always tell my students and my people that are interested in playing the fiddle, especially if they're adults. I always say it's a lot easier to learn when you're little, because kind of going back to that, you're really cute when you're little, and whenever you're bad, it's a lot cuter whenever you're little and bad than when you're an adult and bad. But I also say you're never too old to learn. So you can learn at any point in time. People just may not think you're as cute whenever you're practicing, but that's okay.
Practice.
But, Exactly. Right. I would give it a shot. And, it is not, fiddle music is not for everyone. And so I think that but it is for a lot of people. And sometimes people don't think it's for them until they hear it, or they hear the right song, or they connect to a certain thing. And so, just trying your best. And I always tell, some of my students too, when I started playing, whenever I learned how, I did my scales, like my, down the strings with, learning the notes and the fingers and such. But when I got to the point where I had to play 2 strings at the same time, I almost quit. Like, I almost gave it up. It's like, and you look back and you're like, oh my God, 2 strings is the easiest thing ever. But I'll tell my students that when we get to that point, I'm like, listen, I almost quit. Like, this was almost a deal breaker for me, was these, these 2 strings. Like, it's hard. I've been there. I know that it is really hard. But once you get past that one little thing, then you're going to like look back in 10 years and say, that was so silly. Why was I so mad? Why would I quit over playing 2 strings, and so keeping that mentality for all of your, everything that you're doing. I mean, for the longest time, I hated recording. I hated being in the studio. So kind of getting over that, just like, okay, just, get over it and practice, and confidence is key too, especially in fiddle music, because you're a little bit at an advantage because you don't have notes that you have to stick to. You can, kind of do your own thing a little bit, and if you mess up 9 times out of 10, nobody's even going to know that you've ever messed up unless you let them know. So confidence is, key as well, which takes a long time. I mean, it took me a long time to get confident, in not only fiddle, but singing and all of that. Confidence is a really big part.
Yeah. You talked about earlier about practicing in the back of the van and recording your videos. What was your first album or thing that you all recorded and put out? And what was that process like for you?
Oh, so I recorded an album with my dad, and man, it's been so long. I was probably 14 or 15. It's so bad. Like, looking back, I'm like, oh, I'm glad I have it. It's great. But it's almost like, I find it really difficult to listen to myself talk or sing. Like, it's tough, like you hear yourself on a voice message, like, do I really sound like that? But I mean, it's, it can't be good, but I'm glad I did it because it got me, that experience. So we put out that album. Like I said, I was probably 14 or 15. So, 15 years ago or so. And I put out an album with my friend, Will Paget, in 2017, which it was much better, and I've recorded on a couple of other people's albums as well, just some small minor stuff. I'm hoping to do some more recording, again, kind of getting over that. Recording is difficult for me because I'm a performer, and I feed off of the audience, I feed off of the crowd, I feed off of my band. And when I'm separated from my band and we're in different rooms, that's really hard for me, because I just don't have that, music and playing with a band is something that nobody understands unless you've actually done it. There's just a connection there. Is just like, it's really difficult, if not impossible, to actually explain without being in that moment. And so recording for me sometimes takes that away a little bit. Yeah. And so that's a hard step for me to overcome, but I'm working on it.
There you go. Anything in the works, or any projects that you're working on right now?
So the goal is to put out an album either this year or next year. It is likely going to be a album of mostly traditional music. So, Appalachian traditional style. That's kind of our ultimate goal. With my band, with the Kentucky Bourbon Trailers, we're hoping to put that out within the next. We've been talking about putting one out for a while, and we've just been really busy with shows that we never really had the time to settle down and do an album. Yeah. But we're getting to a point where we're not quite as busy as we were, which is good because we actually have that time to sit down and actually make that happen. So hopefully in the next year or two, this year or early next year, we'll have that put out.
All right. Okay. So what is your dream for traditional fiddling in the years to come?
For myself or just in general?
Both.
Okay, I love it.
You set that one up perfect.
So I hope to, for myself, I have always enjoyed playing music, but I have never had music be my main source of income, if you will. It's not been my main job. And I actually really like it that way. And I think that the reason I have not became burnt out and continue to have such a love for music is because I'm able to kind of balance that with other things. And that's not the case for everybody. I'm always super jealous of people that play music all of the time. But for me, it's really nice to be able to have that balance between doing other things and also being able to, play music when I can and not, all of the time. So I hope to just continue to do kind of what I'm doing in the sense of, continuing to play. Definitely an album is in the works. I really want that to happen. I think every musician's dream is to make it big, and I think that is not my ultimate goal. I would love to have just a steady, playing, 50, 75 shows a year. I have an amazing band. I was just talking about this the other day with them. We were actually driving back from Camp AJ. They are all just wonderful, wonderful human beings. I've known them all a really long time, and being able to play music with the people that you love and the people that you respect and you enjoy their company is just unlike, any other. And I want to continue to play with those guys as long as they'll have me. So I think that is just amazing. Keeping that tight knit group together is really important to me. As far as I think traditional fiddle music worldwide, more of it. We just need more people to do that. And I think the more that we can, as traditional musicians, be able to expand and spread that word, because, a lot of people have never even heard of it before. And so being able to spread that out to where more people want to do that is really important. I want my students that I currently have, and I don't have a lot of them because, I just don't have the time, but I want them to take my spot in 10 to 20 years, and then they can do hopefully the same thing that I'm doing, and then they can spread that to somebody else.
Yeah, that's a beautiful sentiment to paying it forward and passing it on to the next generation. So I know that you mentioned Cap and AJ and Work Fest, and so our mission statement is building hope, transforming lives, and sharing Christ's love through service in Appalachia. So we always end on this question with all of our guests. So when you think about those four principles, hope, transformation, love, and service, which one resonates with you the most when you think of Appalachia?
I think it would depend on the week for me. Maybe even the day. But right now, I think service really speaks to me. And the reason I say that is because I have been incredibly touched by, and I'm incredibly touched every year, but, Workfest and Youth Fest is happening currently. Just to see all of those young people who are using their spring break and, and they're, instead of going to the beach, instead of doing all of these, whatever they could be doing, they're choosing to spend their time, in a new place that they've never been before, to help somebody who is in need. I always make sure that I thank them for being there, using their time to, to help somebody else.
Yeah, that's beautiful. That's a great way to end our show. Callie, thank you so much for your time today and sharing with us and with our audience. And we definitely will be going out and look for your videos and your music. Yeah. And we really just appreciate your time today on the show.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Our guest today has been Callie Northern, Education Director at the Living Arts and Science Center. We hope you enjoyed the show today and that you will check out next week's episode. Tell your friends to check us out too. You can follow the work of Christian Appalachian Project on all social media channels. You can also find the podcast at wearecap.org/podcast or wherever you get your favorite podcast. If you like the show, please take a moment to leave us a review. We surely appreciate it. And be sure to subscribe so that you never miss a new episode. We'll see you next week.